Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. It's always a pleasure to talk about freelancing, which is a topic that I'm very passionate about myself and where I work. So I'm going to start off by giving a quick intro about myself and the company. My name is Marwan Abdelaziz. I'm the CEO of Ureed.com, which is a freelancers marketplace focused on the MENA region. We started earlier this year by expanding our services. We started off working with translators and writers to provide content services for clients across the GCC. And later in the year, we decided to expand our professional services based on the insights that we started collecting from the market. And later in July, we introduced a ton of new services related to things such as graphic design, UX, UI, software engineering, and more. So today, Ureed has over 50,000 freelancers and over 6,000 clients from across the region, and we're constantly expanding. And we have a lot of great plans for next year as well to expand our marketplace further, whether by adding more talented people to the marketplace to allow more clients to transact with us, and by improving our enterprise model as well to allow more, let's say, evolved companies to be able to hire more remote workers and contingent workers at large. So today we're going to discuss a few things that we've been hearing from the market and a few perceptions that we saw from either clients or insights that we collected from freelancers that we like to debunk. And hopefully towards the end of the session, we will be able to give you a better idea on how to work with freelancers generally, how to hire them. And maybe this can be as well some great insights for freelancers themselves to understand how they should value their services and how they should steer the conversations with their clients when they get to work with them directly. Towards the end of the session, we're going to have a Q&A. Anyone who has a question, please, there is a panel on the right on the session where you can leave your comments, and I'll gladly answer them right away. Also, at the end of the session, we have a special surprise, as the marketing team likes to call it, to help you get started on Ureed if you haven't yet. So let's debunk a few myths. So the first one we want to talk about is that freelancers aren't reliable. And this is something that I hear constantly from clients over and over again, right? And I think there is an inherent problem is that most clients believe that when you hire a freelancer, they will bring their magic wand and simply make everything work. But there are a lot of structural organizational issues that we need to understand first before you can decide whether or not freelancing is going to work for you or your company. The first thing I want to explain is the difference of workers generally. When you look at the talent economy at large, we like to call it the contingent workers, because freelancers are not necessarily someone who would come and do a job for a short period of time and then leave. In more evolved economies and more evolved freelancing markets, what we see is that contingent workers can be part-timers, can be full-time advisors, can be long-term freelancers, or can be what we call gigsters. So again, the idea of freelancing is not linear and it's not uniform in a way. It always boils down to how the client wants to, let's say, maximize the value out of their talent resources, and how they want to focus the time that the freelancer dedicated for this particular client to get things done, whether of higher quality or in a much faster period of time. So that's the first thing I want to discuss. The second thing I want to discuss is the types of freelancers, because a lot of times people perceive freelancers to be of low value and of low skill as well. They usually preserve the high value or high impact work for internal resources or full-time employees, while they usually reserve freelancing for what they call in the business the grunt work, or work that does not require a lot of intellectual capacity. While this is a huge myth, because freelancers are perhaps four different types. One of them is what we call expert talents, or people who have extensive experience in their line of business, and they usually can provide strategic value to the client, whether by advisory or by managing teams that can deliver the work on their behalf. And we've been recently working a lot with those experts, especially that a lot of people at some point in their career where they accumulate a massive amount of experience in a particular domain, they would like to not be tied to a particular employer and explore, working with clients across the board. And this is what we call advisors. The second complexity, or the second level of freelancing, is what we call consultant, where someone who has a decent amount of experience in their domain, but they're actually executors as well. People who have a very good balance between strategic understanding of their domain or the things they'll be able to offer the clients, but at the same time, they have the operational and executional capacity to be able to deliver on this particular work. And then we have the third level is what we call the associates, or people who focus entirely on operations, people who can execute the work. So in the context of, let's say, software engineering, this is your individual contributor or your software engineer, person who can basically execute the strategies or the ideas that you've set in motion. And they have the right operational and executional experience to be able to conduct this work, whether with very high quality or in a very fast period of time. The last or the entry level of freelancing is what we call a helper or a junior. And this is usually someone who just started their career. They have only a few years of experience, and they're willing to give a helping hand, but they will need a lot of guidance and support and a complete support system to be able to execute the work. And this is usually where the problem happens, is that people usually mistake the juniors for being consultants and the other way around. So when you bring someone who's very senior and put them on a very junior level work, or work that does not require any sort of intellectual capability, they end up being frustrated and they wouldn't continue working with you for a very long period of time. And when you get someone junior who are highly driven and they want to get work done, and they usually treat you as a client, so they don't push back on the narrative a lot, they end up either short on their delivery when it comes to quality, or they take a much longer time to execute the same amount of work. So this ends up being a frustrating experience as well. So reliability is only measured in the ability of the freelancer to conduct the work asked from them. So it always falls back to the kind of brief you as a client would write for them, and the support system that you have in place to be able to support those contingent workers to carry out their work. So that's the first myth. If you have questions about this, I can happily answer it. Please let me know on the right panel in this Livestorm app. The second thing that we want to talk about is that freelancers are a cheap way of getting things done. And this is something that we constantly hear over and over again, because usually people associate, for some reason, freelancing with cost cutting or saving only. But a lot of times we've seen examples of clients who relied on freelancers just to cut down on cost. However, they do not focus on the quality of the work or the strategic outcome of what this freelancer can do. And this usually happens in projects or domains that are quite strategic, like software engineering, for example, or product management. Because when you have a very limited number of resources in terms of people internally within the organization, and you want to start outsourcing a lot of the strategic work to freelancing, but at the same time, you don't have enough budgets, or you don't have enough, let's say, time to manage those people, you end up delivering subpar work, or work that is not going to help your organization on the long term. So measuring the cost of freelancing should not be about cost cutting. It's more about the value this freelancer is going to be able to create. For example, if you're going to be hiring someone to help you with your finances, you'd much rather pay a decent amount of money for an experienced freelancer who will be able to work on your strategic finances or your pitch deck if you're a founder, or even your audit reports at some cases that we've seen. So the risk of hiring someone to do such a large job or a complex job and just compromise on the quality of the outcome can be very, very hurtful for the business. In some other cases, we've seen people compromise timelines just to cut on costs, because when you hire someone who's not very well versed or experienced in their domain, they might end up doing the job exactly the way you want, but it might take them a lot more time to achieve that. So in a lot of cases, you might end up being late to the market, or you might end up having to pay your entire organization more salaries to retain them until you get your product to the market, or you might end up even missing deadlines with clients if you're an agency or you provide a certain service to the market. So it's very advisable to not put freelancers in comparison with the cost of hiring full-time, because it's about tapping into a pool of expertise to use your resources in the best way possible. Because in our opinion, and my opinion personally, strategy is all about making choices to use your resources to maximize the value that you want to bring to the market or to your customers. So if you have a certain amount of money and this amount of money is dedicated only for talent or resources, you need to use it very, very wisely to end up reaching a point in the market when you can start generating revenue, especially for companies. And this is something that we really want to change when it comes to the culture of how organizations deal with freelancing across the Middle East. And I think it will be useful to a lot of managers and a lot of hiring managers to start thinking about it from that perspective. If you end up using those budgets correctly, and even in some cases hiring what they call expensive resources, or resources that can provide advisory on things or strategic value in any way, shape, or form, you might end up kind of saving costs on the long term. Right, so that is the second myth that we want to talk about. So please, if you have any questions, let me know either over chat or on the questions. I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, I don't think I have a lot of questions so far. Okay, actually the team pointed out something I think is quite important to highlight as well, which is the culture, because culture is the biggest issue right now in the Middle East when it comes to hiring freelancers, because a lot of companies are designed in a way or functions in a way that they can only work with in-person interactions. Of course, this has a great value to add when you have an entire team sitting or co-located in a single office. That can accelerate distribution of information and can create a lot of synergies between people. However, we live in a new reality right now, which is COVID-19, and a lot of people will never be able to either come back to the office again because they adjusted their entire lifestyle around remote work. Some companies found that it's actually useful to have a more distributed workforce and have people distributed across multiple geographies. So companies that are not adjusted yet for this new reality might face a lot of issues in the future in case this crisis of COVID-19 was prolonged, or more and more high-value talent believe that there is a value in working with as a freelancer and they want to continue this way. So that will prevent all those companies from tapping into this network, and they will only be confined to the availability of talent in the geographic location. So we have one question from Hadil. Not sure if you can hear me, but as a freelancer, I do believe that proposals always show the extent of freelancers' background. Of course, Hadil, I think presentation and the proposals that you send to your clients are quite essential to understanding, the value you'll be able to offer. But what we usually advise the clients to do and advise freelancers as well, that before starting any engagement, you need to set very clear expectations about what kind of value you'll be able to provide to this client, the kind of previous experience that you have before even you delve into pricing. So yeah, myth that freelancers are a cheap way to deliver their work, so depending on the client choice. I agree. This again depends on the client choice. But what we're saying is, yeah, I don't think you can join at the moment, but we will invite you to stage a little later once we finish the session. So again, just to explain this point, Hadil, to you, that the ability for you to present yourself to the client in a way and set expectations on what kind of scope the client is willing to commit to will prevent you from having to delve into several discussions about how the client should perceive your value and how much they're willing to pay for it. So it's quite important that that you set these expectations head on, and for the client side as well, to understand that what you're paying for is not for someone to replace your full-time employees, it's just a different way of delivering value. All right, so I'm going to move on now. So yeah, freelancers are, we have another question before we get to this. In some jobs, I feel like some clients are hesitant to pay good for the freelancers. So Hassan, sorry, I agree with you that a lot of clients are still hesitant to pay a decent amount of money because again, they perceive freelancing to be, let's say, lower value than hiring full-time employees, which is a big misconception that we're trying to combat here in the market, especially for things that does not have a recurring value or a strategic value for the company. So we see this a lot in things like translation and content writing because the clients view this as transactional. So they always look for a ton of proposal at the same time and make a decision purely based on pricing. We're going to be introducing even a new profile view on Ureed that basically focuses the client's attention to the freelancer's experience rather than purely on pricing, because we believe that should be a secondary decision, not a primary decision. All right, so I think I'm going to move on. Freelancers aren't in it for the long haul. This is another misconception or myth that we see constantly in the market, that freelancers are all about short-term value. And I hate to do this, but I think the client is usually to blame when it comes to this kind of misconception, because I've been a hiring manager before for freelancers, and when I don't have enough time to think about how to basically position those freelancers within the organization and put them in a position that they can provide strategic value that would benefit either my team or my organization on the long term. So they basically are put in a position where they become a quick fix instead of being of strategic value and create strategic input for the organization. So we completely disagree with this narrative, because it all depends on the ability of the client to place them in the right organization, the readiness of the organization to be able to integrate with them correctly. And basically, we see a lot of clients withhold information from freelancers about their priorities and how they view the outcome to be in the future. And this makes the freelancer ends up just scratching the surface on the value they can deliver. I've worked as a freelancer myself a lot. If the client is willing to volunteer a lot of information about their business and about their plans and priorities, sometimes I might come up with better ideas on how to deliver this work correctly. Because if you're a CTO or a CFO or a CMO and you're hiring a freelancer and you tell them exactly what to do not expect a lot more than what you ask for. If you give them broader scopes and broader understanding of your objectives, they might be able to create value based on their previous experiences or ideas that they experimented with that might end up creating far more value to what was originally asked. So again, long haul can be possible with freelancers. We've seen cases of companies hiring freelancers for a very long period of time. You can get a freelancer to work in your organization for many months or years consecutively to see their input come to life eventually. But if the work requires you to provide short-term transactional work, then do not expect them to stick around for so long, because in the first place, you haven't involved them enough to be able to understand what's coming in the future. So freelancers are a flight risk. Again, this goes back to the point that I mentioned earlier that there are 4 types of freelancers, whether advisors or consultants, associates, or helpers. And in the case that the freelancer is placed incorrectly based on their level of experience and expertise, they become quickly bored or disengaged from the work they're doing with you. So they might not end up sticking for a long period of time. However, what we're seeing starting COVID-19 is that freelancers are usually looking for more long-term engagements than short-term transactional work. Because as a freelancer, you need to exert a lot of effort in the beginning to understand the business and understand what the client is trying to achieve. So they don't want to keep doing this over and over again. They prefer to have a client or 2 on board, and they dedicate their entire working hours to those 2 clients or 3 clients. So I disagree with this narrative because it depends on the level of engagement that you do or the effort you exert in briefing this freelancer. It depends again to your ability to assess their skill set and place them in the right place on the organization or give them the right capacity. And last but not least, setting expectations with them from the get-go. At Ureed, when we work with enterprise clients, once we figure out the type of talent that the client wants, when we go back and start looking into our list of freelancers or database, the first thing that we ask for freelancers is availability, because a lot of times the client wants to guarantee that this freelancer will be available for 6 months or 3 months or whatever the time needed to continue this engagement. So if you as a hiring manager set this expectation ahead of time with the freelancers you're hiring and made it a condition to starting the work, you will not end up having to deal with multiple freelancers over and over again because you couldn't have one expert or one consultant to stick around for a long time. So I think that is pretty much it. So we have a poll on the webinar, which is, you still believe that freelancers are less reliable than full-time employees? So we have answers on the poll which says no. And I'm biased, but I agree with this narrative because it's like comparing apples and oranges. Because at the end of the day, it will all go back to, because being a full-time employee or a freelancer, that is just a contractual detail. It's irrelevant to the quality of the work you'll be able to deliver or the kind of commitment you'll be able to offer the client. We've seen many clients struggle with full-time employment in the first place because they're either not ready organizationally to have a hierarchical structure to be able to hire a lot of people and manage them. And most likely they lack the infrastructure to be able to maintain employment contracts and pay those people. So freelancing would make sense to those clients even more and even create more value to them than full-time employees. The second thing is, have you ever worked with freelancers before? Okay, we have 67% of them working with, of the people attending the webinar says that they worked with freelancers before. If you never worked with freelancers before, I advise you to go to Ureed and try our platform. I think you're gonna like it. Okay, where exactly does Ureed.com come in? Okay, that's a very simple question. What we offer to clients is the ability to help them find the freelancer, essentially. So in a way, we are a very, very large recruitment agency. So you can come to us and say, I need to build a website. We can help you in two different ways, whether by getting you an expert who can help you staff a team around this objective, such as a previous CTO or someone with exceptional technical experience who can identify the needed stack of talent and help you place those talents accordingly and set up the cadence needed to get the work done. Or if you have a very specific request, for example, I need an accountant or I need a UX UI designer, we have a very large database of pre-vetted talents that we work with on an enterprise level. So any talent that you would get as a client from the enterprise services that we offer, it will be guaranteed that this talent is pre-vetted and knows exactly what they're talking about. And we will help you as well frame the objectives of your project in a right way that the freelancer can understand and get the work started quickly. Also, we manage all the contractual agreements and any kind of financial dealings that you need to do with this freelancer. So what we do is that we bill you directly as a company, and we handle all the payments that goes out to the freelancers. So I hope that clears this question. So yeah, safe and secure, absolutely it is safe and secure and compliant as well, which is quite important to many companies that works within the UAE and KSA. And yes, we provide 24/7 customer service. So in case you faced any issues with either the talent, we have a committee that can basically review the work and review the brief and see if there's any issue on any of the sides. We never side with a particular side without assessing the full situation head on and provide really good insights into how to either continue or part ways with this engagement. So yeah, now is the QA time. So if anyone wants to join and discuss with me a little bit more on freelancing, I'd be happy to answer your questions. Guys, if you don't want to join the stage, you can simply type your question on chat. I'll be happy to answer it. Okay, I got a question from Fadila. What about freelance jobs that cannot be quantified, like, for example, engineering and architecture? How can we ensure that the client pays them fairly? So it's important to look at it from two different perspectives. The first one being how the freelancers themselves value their time. So I've given a lot of advice for freelancers to price their services correctly. The first one being their ability to deliver work in a particular timeline, and what would be the value that the market is ready to pay as well. You don't want to be overpriced, that the client find you far more expensive to be able to hire you on board. And from the other side, you don't want to be too cheap, so you force your peers as well to lower their price and make it more and more difficult for people to enter the freelancing space. So for unquantifiable jobs, I think it goes back to the first thing, the geographic location of the client, not you. So if you are, as a freelancer, living in any place around the world, that does not matter. What matters is the geographic location of the client itself. So they will be able to basically pay a certain amount of money for the service provided. And the second thing, what would be the average pricing for your level of expertise? So even on Ureed, we have now 3 levels of experience. We have a beginner, intermediate, and expert. And we even started providing recommendations on what would be your average pricing in terms of hours that you can put directly on the marketplace. So we have another question. What do you suggest if I post a project on Ureed but don't get enough pitches? Please reach out to our operations team and they will help you invite freelancers, because we started limiting the number of emails that goes out to the freelancers. So the best thing you want to do is, once you post the project and you haven't got enough pitches, just reach out to our customer support. They will help you get 10 pitches immediately. We have a very large database of vetted freelancers. Where can we suggest on how to improve the Ureed website? There is actually, if you go to Ureed, there is a help button in the middle. If you send us a message, rest assured it will reach our CTO, our head of product, and myself, and we constantly read those messages. So this is not like a black void that will never be read. Anything that you type in the help box actually reaches me personally as well. So it would be great if you can send us some suggestions, and it will be super helpful. Thank you, Hassan. Okay, any more questions? Okay, I want to go back to this question about paying fairly as well, because especially for clients that are based in countries with low pay, for me, it's unacceptable to use this as a reason to underpay talent, especially from the client side. So it's important to put a comparison in what would be the value that I would pay for someone in my geographic location. I've seen companies like Twitter, for example, telling all their employees, they know that San Francisco, for example, as a city is quite expensive to live in, cost of living is very high. So they told their employees, if you want to move to a cheaper state or even a cheaper country when it comes to cost of living, we're going to still pay you the same amount of money, because this is what the market dictates on clients and markets, to pay for this value that is being created. Without taking into consideration where the freelancer is located. If there is a disadvantage to the location of the freelancer, whether it's time zone or language barrier, that can be a discount on the value that you pay. But leveraging that the freelancer is based out of a country that usually provide lower income is not something that the freelancer should embrace. Like, they should not go out to the market and say, hey, because I live in a country that has a very cheap cost of living, I'm willing to take less amount of money for the services I provide, because that will hurt people economically in other countries. And it's the other way around as well. As a client, you should not go to markets or low-cost centers just to lower your costs. It's about the abundance of talent. So I've seen many clients, for example, in the GCC, exploring markets in Pakistan, India, or Egypt, not because it's cheaper, but because there are far more talents available, especially in the tech industry, for example. So we're even seeing clients paying engineers in countries like Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and even Pakistan and India, a far more higher salaries and higher rates than what would usually pay in the UAE and KSA and other markets. So it's quite important to think about it from this perspective as a client, that what you should be looking for is talent that can maximize the value for the amount you're paying. So if you got a freelance engineer that gets paid, let's say, $1,000 a month or 2,000 or 3,000, you should look at the value that this person is able to create for the $3,000. So it's not about just the amount of money that goes out of your bank account. It's about the value that this person brings on board. What happens if the freelancer work does not come out in the quality expected? This is an excellent question, Dina. Thank you for asking this. For us at Ureed, what we do is that we give 1 week trial period for enterprise clients. So if we place the talent with you and told you, you know what, this is an excellent engineer, you should go and work with them. And on the first week, it turned out that this person is either not aligned with your organization, was not able to provide the quality expected, then we offer a replacement immediately and try to help place this talent in an adequate and different adequate opportunity as well. Because the last thing that we want to have is a frustrated client or a frustrated freelancer. So we always work with clients on placing exactly the right talent. That's the first thing. The second thing, even on the marketplace itself, if you post a job and the quality of the work is not adequate or not what you expected, you can always dispute the project. And our team will look at the outcome through experts in the domain that you posted, and will determine that this freelancer delivered adequately or not. However, there are certain things that you can look at prior to contracting this person in the first place. The first thing is portfolio. So if you're in the art industry or the engineering industry, you should always look for the portfolio before you get started the work. So if you're hiring a designer, you need to look at their style of work or the outcomes of the previous projects, their ability to translate briefs into actual work. And even for engineering, because a lot of times engineers would contribute to a particular part of the project. So it would be advisable to actually have a call or a meeting with the freelancer beforehand and try to understand exactly what was their role in those projects that they claimed that they worked on. How could a freelancer convince a client that they're into this project while they can't show their previous work due to confidentiality procedure? Actually, the consulting industry perfected this manner, because a lot of times that your work would be confidential. What you can do is that you can sanitize your work. So if you're a designer, you can always reframe your design in a way to make it basically lack any client information that would be confidential. If you're someone who works in, let's say, financial services or consulting or more business-related topic, you can explain your previous experience without revealing any information about this client. For example, you can say, I used to work in the telco industry, where I worked on a marketing strategy that promotes, prepaid lines, for example. This information will convey exactly what you worked on without having to reveal who the client is. And we've seen this as well in literally every single vertical that we offer on our platform. So it's going to be a little bit of more work for the freelancer to do to prepare their portfolio in an adequate manner, so it can give this client the confidence that what they're looking at is exactly what they want. What about the recommendation letter? I'm sure that would help. Hassan, I kind of disagree, because a lot of times the recommendation letters comes very, very late in the process. So once the client is convinced that you're the right person, what they want to do is to look at recommendations to see if you're the adequate talent that the client is looking for, by saying that peers in the industry or people who have similar background or work scope actually recommended you for similar jobs. So I think portfolio is far more important than recommendation letters. Any further questions? Hadil, may you tell us what's your area of expertise? Can you write on chat what exactly do you do? So you do translation and SEO content writing. There is something quite simple that you can replace all the client name and any numbers or information into something that is, blinded version or sanitized version. Another thing that I personally used to do, by the way, I started my career as a designer and a writer. And what I used to do is create spec work. So this is something that designers love as well, which is, I would take an interesting piece from the internet and I try to redesign it myself and show it on my portfolio. So if you're a translator, try to get very iconic letters or very iconic pieces of content, whether it's a famous speech or an article that was very, very famous, and try to translate it and use that in your portfolio. Because number one, clients would find it more interesting to read this content and understand the context of it. And number two, it would make you look like someone who is very well versed in the industries that you're at. So if you're a translator and you have a particular focus on e-commerce, try to Google the most popular articles about e-commerce and translate that, right? So if the client sees this, they don't have to see an actual work that you've done. They can see, that you actually have a good understanding of this work stream. So if you work in translation, for example, for e-commerce, go to the apple.com page, get the iPhone page and try to translate it. So the client can see your ability to translate very complex product descriptions into, transcreate it into something that, Middle Eastern customers would be interested in. So I hope that answered your question. So, yeah, okay. Okay, I think we're done with the Q&A. I don't see any further questions here. So I'm just gonna move on to the closing. So we've actually prepared the promo code for any client who wants to get started on Ureed, which is Web 2020. If you click on the button here in front of you, you'll be able to go to your Ureed employer account, and we will give you $20 just to try the platform for the first time, start hiring and so on. So I think that's it. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. It was a pleasure talking to you. And of course, this will be recorded and shared on our social media channel. And please, if you have any questions, you will find me as Marwan Abdelaziz on LinkedIn. Share with me any questions that you have. I'll be happy to answer any of them. Thank you so much again. Have a great day.